Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Couch Conversations.
Good evening,
We are excited that you are joining us on tonight
as always.
as we talk about a very, very, very important topic on tonight.
Yep.
Our mental health. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And so we're just going to talk about it with some experts on tonight. And so we are super excited about it. We want to start the broadcast with a moment of silence for those in the state of Texas that are experiencing such a traumatic loss on tonight.
Yeah, not just Texas, all around the world.
All around.
Buffalo, yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And so we want to just keep those people lifted up in prayer and just praying for those people. So we just have a moment of silence. All right. So we are going to jump right in on tonight, and we are going to introduce our guest on tonight. And I have to start off by saying our first guest, who was Joyce Magby, is unable to join us on tonight. Her schedule got changed at the last minute, so she ended up having to see a client tonight at 6:00. And so she was unable to come on tonight, but she'll be on soon. We're going to have her back soon.
Duty called.
So yeah, and it's important. What she does is important, and so we know the clients are most important.
Yeah,
so
mental health doesn't work on a schedule.
It does not.
Absolutely.
It does not.
Yeah.
So she's needed.
Yep, and we thank her for her service.
Yep, for accepting and everything that she does. So we're going to start introducing our first guest on tonight. His name is Mr. Shelton Young, and we're going to add him to the stream. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going? Can you guys hear me well?
We can hear you well. We are super excited to have you on tonight.
Yes.
Shelton is a native of Henderson, North Carolina. He is a licensed clinical social worker. He attended UNCG, where he earned his Bachelor of Social Work with a concentration in school social work. He also earned a minor in sociology. He went on to earn his Master of Social Work degree that focused on clinical social work practice in the Joint Master of Social Work program at North Carolina A&T and UNCG. Full-time, he serves as the first in-house mental health therapist for Guilford County Schools. He had the task of developing this program that was funded by the Innovative Partnership Grant from North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. And so his program centers on the mental health of school-age students in the comprehensive support and improvement as outlined by the state. That is super, 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 super great, and it's so needed. There's so much that we can say. He specializes in addressing mental health challenges, mostly with the childhood disorders that impact the African American children and families, and adjustment issues experienced by college students with marginalized identities. Shelton has accomplished many things. He has published research that explores family-level factors, depression, anxiety among African American adolescents. In addition, he recently designed a special topics course for the social work department of UNCG. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. And so we are super happy to have you. He is actually about to expand even the more as he will be relocating to Chicago to begin his PhD in social work at UIC in the Jane Addams College of Social Work. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you so much.
To have you.
I'm happy to be here.
because I remember you as a little boy. So you just have grown up. And so we are so excited to have you on tonight. Our next guest is Dr. Shannon Hargrove Scott. Welcome.
Welcome.
We are excited to have you on tonight as well. Dr. Hargrove Scott is a wife, a mother of one son, one daughter, and two bonus daughters. She has 4 grandsons, and most importantly, she is a servant in the Lord's house. She has an associate's degree, 2 associate's degrees in human services and substance abuse and criminal justice, a bachelor's degree in social work, a master's degree in social work from North Carolina Central, and a doctorate of education degree in organizational leadership with Christian ministry emphasis from Grand Canyon University. She is licensed in the state of North Carolina as a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed clinical addiction specialist. She is the Chief Executive Director of Progression Services, which is a nonprofit organization. She has been in the field of social work her entire career and has worked in the capacity of clinical social worker for over 14 years. She started her career as social services, doing foster care, CPS, adoption, APS, adult care home specialist. She's worked with various populations and sectors as such as community mental health, mobile crisis, substance abuse with children, young adults, and the elderly. She has a passion for people, and her desire is that when she comes into contact with someone, that she assists them in achieving the change that they desire, that things change for the better if it's nothing but their perspective of life that has changed. Welcome. We are excited to have you.
We are.
And so because Joyce was unable to join us tonight, my faithful love bug, I just love her with everything in me. She is one of the most amazing people that I know. And she agreed at last minute to come on and join us as we talk about mental health. And that is the Reverend Cora Bass Boyd, as most people know her. And so we are so excited to have her as well. Reverend Boyd received her Bachelor's of Science in Education from St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia. Her Master's in Counseling from North Carolina Central University in Durham. She also holds a national board certification in the area of counseling. Over a course of 34 years, she has spent time developing lessons, teaching, facilitating mental health workshops, and conducting numerous counseling sessions. Her expertise has been utilized on the elementary, middle, and high school levels. In addition to her work in the public schools, she has worked with children, parents, and families in the mental health facilities. Since retiring from Vance and Warren County Public School Division, she continues to recognize the need for mental health professionals. She has opened her own business and is the sole proprietor of Diversified Counseling Services, where she offers counseling for anxiety, depression, stress, grief, loss, anger management, relationship issues, and personal and spiritual guidance. Her services are provided by appointment only. Welcome. Each one of you all come with such a wealth of knowledge in each of your respective places. So we are super excited to have each of you on tonight as we talk about our mental health.
Yep. So as we get started, tell us what led each of you to a field of mental health.
And Shelton, we'll start with you.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go. So I did not ever envision becoming a therapist. When I started undergrad, I was convinced that I was going to be a teacher. So I majored initially in elementary and special education, got into the school system through, student teaching experiences, and I was not enjoying my experience. I enjoyed being in the classroom with the students. I could not see myself doing it for 30 years. And I also felt incredibly unhelpful when I saw that my reach was very limited in how I could impact children. And so I wanted to remain in the education system, but I wanted to be more on the therapeutic side of education. And so I'll never forget, I had a student, and I was over a second grade class, and the student had moved recently to Greensboro, and the student had lost his mom tragically, and his dad didn't want him, so he ended up coming to Greensboro to reside with an aunt. And the student had so much trauma that was impacting how he showed up in the learning environment. And whenever I tried to intervene or talk to other teachers, they were like, "Well, that's something that we don't handle. We typically refer those issues to the school social worker." And at this point, I've gone through elementary, middle, high school, and never knew anything about a school social worker. And so I met with the school social worker at the school, became intrigued, and I later switched my major to social work. And I knew that I wanted to eventually become a therapist.
Wow. Wow. Much needed. Much needed.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited about your role and what you're doing in Guilford County. I wish we had that in all of the counties because as I see children myself on a day-to-day basis, it just amazes me some of the things that they have to go through or have come from, and so it is so needed. It is so needed. All right, Dr. Shannon.
For me, when I first went to school, I'm not gonna lie, I was going to school for money. I found the hustle. So for me, I wanted a career that made lots of money. So I had decided I wanted to go in the criminal justice field. So when I finished Advanced Granville and I went to Central, I tried to get into criminal justice, but it was divine intervention. I became a social worker because it was God's plan, because he blocked all the classes in criminal justice. I could not get one class. And I remember the advisor said, "Hey, since you have that other associate's degree, let's see what's in social work that you can do." And when we looked at the class and the curriculum, all the classes were open. It was just like, choose one, just choose anything you wanted. So for me, it was divine intervention that I became a social worker. And after I completed the bachelor's program, I was praying one night at church watch night, asking God, where should I go to school at? What should I do? And the man that was in the pulpit, my pastor at the time, turned around and said, "God said, where you supposed to be to do what he needs you to do." And then behold, a few months later, they created a master's program at Central. And I was one of the first cohort to go through that master's program. And I got my master's there, and the rest, he's just been guiding away. So for me, it's just not a profession, it's ministry.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Very good.
Much needed.
Yes.
Much needed.
Very good.
Reverend Dr. Boyd.
I'd like to say good evening to the panel and to those who are listening this afternoon. I can't really say that I chose this field. It was more or less, it chose me through God. I too I went to college and didn't even realize that I was going to college for student teaching until my senior year. I thought I was going for another reason. I got my student teaching assignment and went into teaching. I had some family members who were dealing with some mental health illnesses, and I remembered telling God, I'd like to get a degree in counseling, but I'm not sure that I'm going to pass statistics because I'm not math oriented. And North Carolina Central offered statistics class in my room at the high school I was teaching at in the evenings. And I took the class and I told God, I said, if I pass the class, I'll go look into the counseling field. And so I passed statistics, and I said, God, I wanted an A. He said, you didn't ask for an A. You said you wanted to pass the class. And so as I began to study counseling, I took the class, and then they offered another class in my classroom at the high school. And I took that class, and then I got a letter from Centra saying, you can't take any more classes until you declare a major. So I declared a major in counseling. Well, I went to another district for teaching, and because I was halfway through the counseling program, one of the principals where I was working said, they're moving me to another school and we need a counselor. Would you like to come? And I said, nope, I don't like counselors. My counselor had told me I wasn't smart enough to go to college. I don't like high counselors. No, sir. So I'm driving home, and the Holy Spirit said, I opened the door and you didn't walk in. And so I called the principal back when I got home, and I said, I think I might be interested in interviewing. He said, I didn't pay you any attention. Your interview is tomorrow at 2:00. And so I went to the interview, got the job, and finished my master's program in counseling. And it just kind of jump started from there. And so I say again that it wasn't my choosing, it was the Lord's choosing. And as I prepared to take the LPC, I had to abort the process because my dad got cancer, and I was the only one in the family who had a job to take him back and forth to his treatments. And so I didn't ever go back to do the process. And then when I decided I was going to go back, my best friend died of cancer, and I had looked at some things. And at my age, I said, I'm not willing to go back and do that work now. And so I didn't want to pursue counseling. And God again told me through the Holy Spirit that this is your assignment, this is ministry. It's not about the certification in terms of what's on paper. I need for you to do the ministry out of your experiences. I need for you to minister out of your own pain. I need for you to minister through the word of God and through the wisdom of God. And so as I began to think about the practice, there was a lady who owns the building where I am, and people were saying, you need to see her. And I was like, no. And then I said to God, if I run into her, I'll ask. Well, I'm in the grocery store, and I hadn't seen this lady in 40 years or more. And the Holy Spirit says, so and so is behind you. And I turn around slowly, and we embraced and talked. And she offered me a place in her building to do the counseling and to open the practice. And that's where I am. And again, I say it wasn't my choosing, it was the Lord's choosing. And I'm simply trying to live out the will of God and do the ministry and the service for God.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yes.
I thank the Lord that He has ordered all of you all steps, because it sounds like it is definitely more than a job for you all, but it's ministry.
Absolutely.
And so I want to talk on tonight about the importance of taking care of your mental health. I think it's just been a subject that has not been talked about a lot. I think recently now, through COVID and dealing with COVID and all of that, like it has come more to the forefront. But it's just a subject that has not been talked about. And if you said that you had to see a therapist, people kind of looked at you funny or thought that you were crazy. And for me, what really like made me more mental health aware was my son, the oldest, Devontae, when he, after we experienced the fire, we went to seek like counseling. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know, somebody told us, y'all need to, get counseling and things like that. And so we ended up going to, they told us about UNC Hospital. So we could go to the hospital, and they sit down and they talk to us, and they're saying like, no, nothing's wrong. You all just had a traumatic event to happen in your life. And so I was so outdone because I thought, well, Lord, we done went to the wrong place. Like, this is just not where we needed to go. And so I don't think that people really know where they need to go for mental health help, you know. And I mean, if it's something serious, you know, and you're having a crisis, the hospital is the place for you to go. But for us, that wasn't the place that we needed to go. And so really, like, a therapist would have been better for us. We didn't see a therapist. We ended up going to taking the kids to this grief place in Hillsborough. And it was through Duke. And that was a great place because we learned a lot. It's Duke Bereavement. And we learned a lot from that, you know, with the kids. We learned a lot. But for Devontae, and many people don't, you know the extent of his, but he was there. He could not get into the room to pull his siblings out. Like, that was so much weight for him to carry. And I didn't realize the extent of it and the impact that it had made on him, because he seemed to be okay. And I think that that's a problem, like, in our society. Like, we act like things are okay and they're really not okay. And one of the things that I tell people all of the time in our support group, I say, if you act okay, people are going to treat you like you're okay. It's okay if you're having a moment. It's okay to express that moment. But a lot of times we try to hide behind smiles and things like that when we're really going through. And so for him, it was such a traumatic event that happened that after time, it just weighed on him so much. And so his behavior, we start seeing a change in his behavior. And after, you know, we went and found out really like what the source was and why it was like it was, and we understood better. And so now we're able to help him better, but we realized that it had such an impact on his life that he's totally different. Like, and even for us, like, we're not who we were before that, but I just think that we need to be more aware of what this mental health thing is and what resources are available for people. So tell us in your own words, and you all can go in the same order, why is mental health so important, and why, you know, why do we need to make sure we're okay?
Yeah. So, yeah, mental health is incredibly important, and it's specifically for those reasons that you just mentioned. So, especially our community, we have a lot of unprocessed trauma. And it's because historically we have had to address those things within our families, within our communities, within our support systems, with limited outside support, right? And so I even remember when that incident happened and the mood of our entire high school shifted. It was just different. It's so like a full circle moment just sitting here and listening to you share that experience. And so I kind of had like a flashback moment there. But mental health is so important because mental health conditions disproportionately impact African-American communities. And so just to kind of give you guys a frame, about 13.4% of our population identifies as African-American or Black. And so of that 13.4%, 16% of that group reported having a mental health condition, a mental illness. So that is about 7 million people in our country, right, that are African American, that are living with that have reported having a mental health condition. And then for people who really need more perspective, that is larger than the populations of Chicago, Houston, and Philadelphia combined, right? Wow. And so this is just people, African-American folks who have reported, right? And we know that mental health goes underreported in our community. So this is just like folks who have been brave enough to come and step forth and participate in research. But there's such a stigma associated with mental health in our communities, and it's unhelpful, it's unfruitful, it keeps us silent, it breeds isolation, and we all know that isolation is not the best place to be when you are sick or when you are not whole. And so this is why we absolutely need to start talking about these things.
I love that. That's the truth. It is so the truth. And that when you put it in that perspective, when you like as big as Chicago, like that's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge to hear that all of these people are out there. And then there are, like you said, there are people that I can look at and have a conversation with, and I just see something deeper than what they're saying. So that is interesting that you said that. Shannon?
Yes, and a lot of the times as well, because once a mental health diagnosis or once you identify with having a mental health issue, sometimes within our society it's used to label, is used to also kind of penalize people of color, especially within the school systems and in various places. So a lot of the times it's because of the stigma that it carries that certain populations don't want to identify or even come forth and say they have these issues. And then with older generations of males, saying that you need help or saying that you have a mental health issue kind of identifies a weakness. And within that population and within males, it's kind of hard to come forth and say, I need help or I need to talk with someone. And a lot of times we were raised as well, what goes on in the house stays in the house. So you have to internalize that stuff and find the best way.
Wow.
And I tell people, if you don't deal with it, it deals with you. And I call it the trash bag effect. They just keep stuffing stuff in, stuffing it in, stuffing it in. And you know, if you don't change the garbage bag over a while, that garbage bag is going to rip, and that nasty stuff, that dirty stuff is going to get everywhere, and it's going to get in places you didn't want it to get. It get on people that you didn't want it to get on, and then you have to go and clean that stuff up. So I tell people, being willing to talk about it, even if you have to seek it out in a way that you go out of town and get it if that's what you need, or you do it now. Mental health, you could get it via Zoom and through these apps. But mental health is very important because a lot of times we are functioning with issues that we have never resolved. And I call them the root issues. Root issues hinder the way you look at the world, the way you interact with people, your relationships. So it doesn't just stay in one area. When you have a problem with your mental health, it goes into every area of your life, in your relationships. And these things you teach and transfer on to your children, because you're teaching them the behaviors and to look at things through a negative perspective because of the way you see the world, because of your mental health.
Wow.
Shannon, I think you said a mouthful as well. Like it's so true. And growing up, that is what people say. What goes on in this house stays in the house. And a lot of trauma that people are experiencing still now have happened in the house. And so because they're not talking about it, like the parents didn't talk about it, and that behavior runs right over to your children, where they don't feel as if they can talk about it. But what I love that you said too was the trash bag effect. It's the truth, and it spills out. My pastor says this, that wounded people will bleed on people that didn't cut them. Mm-hmm. And it is so true that a lot of times what you're seeing now, it's really not you. Like, so the person's reaction or they're acting out in a certain way, I try to look deeper, because it's just not, it's not necessarily something I did. It really could be just something that you may have going on. And that is just, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Pastor, Reverend.
So Shelton mentioned about the statistical facts about mental health. Another fact that is alarming is that 90.4% of the African Americans reported using religion as their coping mechanism to dealing with mental health in the church. And there's always been a connection of faith and the emotional well-being of African Americans. It is a faith that is sustained even through slavery back in the day, through our ancestors. But there was often a belief that no matter how great the burden, prayer was the answer. And so again, that stigma allows us to not go and get the help that we need and cross those barriers. We tend to trust our faith leaders with whom that we've shared history with whom we've shared a commonality with in dealing with our mental health. But it is imperative that faith leaders are equipped to respond appropriately to mental health resources in our communities while we try to remove these barriers. Prayer is good, and even Jesus, when he was confronted with the blind man, and the disciples asked him, did he sin or did his parents sin? And Jesus told him neither one of them did, that it was that the power of God will show forth. And so we have to be mindful that there are times when we need prayer and that we need to seek our faith leaders. But there are other times when professionals are of need, and that we have to make sure that we are getting the services that we need, that we have to focus on wellness rather than illness. Illness implies that something is wrong, but wellness lends itself more to viewing that treatment as preventative. And one thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands is that it's okay not to be okay. And mental health services promotes balance, it promotes well-being, and it promotes wholeness. And so again, we have to get away from that stigma. We got to understand that faith and faith leaders and church has a place, but God also, as he gave doctors and as he gave lawyers and as he gave these other professionals, he has given mental health and those professionals the knowledge in order to help with people's well-being.
That's good, Miss
It
Moore.
is very good. Yeah. Wow. So good.
Wow.
Yep. So, Mr. Young, I heard the statistic that you just reported, and you said 7 million documented. Talk to us briefly about the undocumented. Like, what are there areas or behaviors that we should look for, or to help us to identify with someone that may need mental health attention?
Yeah. So there's a phenomenon in our community called John Henryism, where we work and work and work. I don't know if you guys know the folklore of John Henry, where he worked and worked until he died, right? And so that phenomenon still exists, where we as a people are so good at masking that, just like, Ayana said, if you present as if nothing is going on, people are going to treat you as such. But, mental health has a way of coming through and communicating to other people that there is something going on, right? And so I would like to think that we are in tune with the people that we are in community and connection with, that we will be able to pick up on subtle changes. So it could be small things. If someone's not coming around as much as they used to, if they are suppressing or coping by using substances or other risky health behaviors, right? If someone seems a little bit more down than normal, if someone is a lot changes in sleep, if they report to you that they're not sleeping as well as they once did, or if they are having muscle aches, upset stomachs, anything that is going on that is not the norm for that person, right? A lot of times, no one is going to come to you and express those things. But for those of us who are more conscious about mental health awareness, we can lead into those conversations and kind of guide and tailor our dialogue with people to kind of arrive at an assessment of like, okay, what's going on here, right? And if you can notice a few changes, right? Lean into those changes, ask. A lot of times we notice things and we just keep silent because we think that it's not our business. And our culture is very communal. And so it is our business. When one of us is going through something, I would like to think that all of us are going through something.
That's good.
Yeah, that is so true.
That's good. And I can say, and I talked about Devontae earlier, but I only talk about him because he gave me permission to. But I remember, like, even with him, like, just like you said, just a little bit more distant, and I'm fussing the whole time saying, Devontae, you don't even come around. He doesn't like to take pictures and da da da, and I'm just fussing. But he was hurting, like, he was really, really hurting, and so I had to understand, and I had to learn how to even handle the situation, because like you just don't understand the depth of a person. You know how bad you may hurt, and but everyone hurts differently. So I agree that there are signs there, and I think that we need to pay more attention to the signs, um, because people act as if they're okay. You just think that they're okay, but then there's a breaking point, back to that trash bag effect. Then you start seeing stuff that's bleeding all over everything, and it's like, oh my God, like, where did this come from? Well, it's been there all the time, but we just don't pick up on all of the signs. Miss Boyd, you really jumped over into something when you talked about the church and mental health with the church, because a lot of times people don't get the help that they need, I feel, because they put the God stamp on it. God's gonna heal me, God can handle everything, and God is a healer. But he gives us people who are able to help us in the areas that we may need help on. There was the man who was at the tomb and he was cutting himself. Well, God came over to Jesus, healed him, so I think that God puts people in places to help us. And I think that the church, well, I won't say that about the church, because all churches do things a little bit differently. But what do you think is the church's role in this? What can the church do better? What are we doing poor at, and what can we improve on?
Well, some of the areas that we can improve on are educating the faith community about what it is that we need to do on a whole. Educate our faith leaders, let our faith leaders know, and make sure that they know where the resources are in the community, that they know where to go to get help, that they know who to get help, that they know the warning signs, that they know the risk factors. We need to make sure that they understand that mental health conditions are real, that they are just as common as physical health and spiritual health. We need to prepare our church leaders to recognize again the symptoms, learn how to have conversation about it, take the stigma out of it. Understand again an awareness and understanding about the preventative measures. We tend to try to cover up. We tend to try to fix. Tend to try to ignore again and act like it's not happening. But as you mentioned about the man cutting himself, nowhere in scripture does the Bible indicate that Jesus conducted a funeral service. Jesus healed people. Jesus cast out demons. Jesus, even when Moses was at the Red Sea and the Egyptians was coming, and God told him, "Why are you crying to me? Give the command, and the Red Sea would be divided." There are some times when we have to speak what the word of God says. If he say he's not a man who should lie, then we need to take the God at his word. We need to take scripture at his word. We need to use scripture and teach people the word of God. His word won't return void. So we got to use the word of God. We got to use that as a healing power and a healing source. We got to, again, allow our church leaders to know, to educate them, to let our churches and our children know that there is a place. There is a root, as my sister has already said. There are traumatic experiences that happen in our lives, many times between the ages of 5 and 9 years old. And because of these traumatic experiences, then it causes a breakdown of mental health well-being. And again, we suppress those things. However, many begins to operate life from that traumatic place, and they don't even realize that that's what they're doing. And so you have to make sure that you allow people the freedom, the understanding, the knowledge base in order to get the help that they need, and break down those barriers.
I love that.
Yep, very good.
Dr. Young, I'm
Not yet.
so what do you all think about that as far as the church? I meant to say, Dr. Shannon, and I think LaShawn said something key, and not be the cause of the mental abuse, because that happens in the church as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It does.
It's such a powerful statement. And I know people right now that are dealing with so much behind the church. And it is such, that's for a whole nother night, because I think we're going to do mental health in the church on another one.
That is very crucial.
But yeah.
Say it again, Miss Boyd.
I said that is very crucial.
It
Church
is.
hurt is a lot of source of mental illnesses.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and like, she said, we all know that Black people go to church, right? And what happens when the source storage place for you to go to is also causing you harm? That's
Jesus.
like saying the pharmacy that you go to get your medicine is also going to harm you once you get there to get your medicine. And so we have to really dig deep here and have a conversation and rest here for a while. And I also think that if we do not address mental illness in faith leaders, right? Like, how is your health? How is your wellness, right? And so that you don't lead from a place of brokenness and bleed onto other people and cause that abuse, right? What is your relationship with power? Like, how have you tapped into the influence that you have, right? And so a lot of times when you have poor accountability within faith systems, this is where a lot of damage happens. And I always tell when pastors are prioritizing their wellness and their mental health, they understand where their scope of care starts and when it stops. And where it stops is when you refer your people out to people that are trained and licensed to help them get through what they're experiencing.
And it's a sad day when I remember a first lady saying, we would talk, I can't remember the setting, but after the service, she broke down and said, I sit and listen to my husband preach every Sunday as pastor, and I get beat up every Sunday night.
Wow.
That's a sad place to be.
Jesus.
And you can't say anything because you have to show faith. Yes, that's another topic for another night. That's a broad topic.
Wow. Wow. That is.
Yeah. Yeah. And just knowing, like, I call her Miss Boyd. That was my teacher. Just knowing the limitations, because for some reason, everybody thinks they could be a counselor. For some reason, everybody thinks they could do social work. So knowing the limitations, and a lot of times in the church, it is just pray. And it's some of the leaders don't want to really acknowledge that they're dependent on God. So if they're dependent on God, that some things they can't do, really nothing that none of us do. We get empowered from God. So just being realistic with, okay, this is an area that I don't know, and I have to seek God on it. And if I have to seek God on it, also that may mean that I need to send them out to someone else that God has empowered with this ability. And I think sometimes within the church, because the leader doesn't want to kind of admit to not being able to fully speak it to this, the only thing that they do know is pray, or sin is the cause of it, or they kind of make the people feel bad about having this mental health issue or this problem, not knowing it could be a chemical imbalance in the brain, something they have no control over, or something that has happened to them and they just can't get past it, and not demonizing it where that makes them feel bad for being in this situation. Because sometimes, when we go into the church, if you don't have that understanding, if you're not mature in your relationship with God, things that are said, you misinternalize it, and well, you internalize it wrong and you misinterpret it. And the information now, you got a church hurt, and then you're confused. And I tell people, church hurt is still hurt. It may not have been meant to be that way, but it's still hurt, and you have to acknowledge people's feelings. And when you don't acknowledge those feelings, it festers and it grows. And taking accountability, because we all don't know everything. We all are learning. We're all growing every day. And if you get to the point that you're not able to receive or allow somebody else to help you in the area, then you really have no use in the kingdom.
Wow. And I think that's a problem when leaders can't take feedback and understand that they may not know it all and they may need to seek extra help. I think that's key. I can remember when we went to went to our new church, and immediately my pastor provided us with services outside of the church. Like, he was like, if you all need this, this is what I have available for you. And I thought it was key. I thought, wow, like, and I think that is an approach that the church, needs to take. We don't know it all. Let me refer you to who may be able to help you. There are Christian counselors, as we can see here on tonight, that are able to help people. Now, our time is running out, and I know you all have places that you have to be, but I want to say this. I received a couple of inbox messages. One inbox message said that they needed help, and do you know any people in this area that are able to provide mental health support with Medicaid?
With that, I know some of the agencies, like the way the system is right now, because of all the changes that they have taken, especially with the MCOs and things, and they're putting everybody in one pot of money, and you have to be able to do everything to be able to provide any services. But I know like places like Daymark and Henderson, they take just about any insurance, and a lot of the community mental health agencies take Medicaid, and then also Googling online for counseling sessions, because a lot of people, what they've done is taken and went into private practice, because the way I look at it, us clinicians, we are the ones that bring in the money, because we're providing all the services. And if we're providing all the services, we could go out on our own and help clients and provide services without a lot of the red tape. So it's a lot of counseling, as they used to say in school, people with their shingles hung out outside. And simple Googling in this area of licensed counselors or therapists. And a lot of us have to be registered in the National Registry, so it'll pop up for you.
Gotcha. Someone did post on the screen, Daymark Janelle posted, I think it's Via Health.
Yeah.
And Daymark, both of those are places that you can go. I have another message as well, where someone is listening now, and their son is dealing with some of the same symptoms that we've been talking about on tonight. And she's really tried to speak with him, but he doesn't want to talk about it. And she wants to know, she feels like their relationship is strained because of this. And how can she get him to open up?
She may not be the one.
Right.
And sometimes that's the hardest thing as a parent, and I'm a parent, I have children, is seeing these things in your child and seeing changes and spiritually picking up on grieving or heaviness in them, but they won't open up to you. It's because of that commonality that you have. You're so familiar with each other. Mm-hmm. It's some things that they may want to say, but when they say it, you may, as a parent, internalize it wrong and not you blame yourself because that's your child and you should know. So sometimes it's just taking your child out allowing an assessment to be done. And why I said an assessment, because the assessment is going to ask all these questions, and it's going to kind of identify what areas would possibly maybe the reason. But with that, it's going to open you up to be able to get them into a therapist, any therapist. And and a lot of the times, because you know your child and their personality, you have to shop around. Just because you go into the office and you meet the therapist and you talk, that don't mean you have to have the session. You can say, oh, I'm glad for your time. Thank you. But this is not a good fit. And there's nothing wrong with that, because therapists are based on their personality. And I know my personality doesn't suit everybody. So I know certain people don't do well with me, and that's fine. I'm just not the one that can help you. But if someone out there and your personalities mesh really well, that child will be willing to sit down and open up to. So I would say, the first thing is seek somebody else, allow someone else to have access, because sometimes the child is not going to say and tell all the stuff that he or she really needs to say because your mom, because your dad.
Right. And a lot of times they may not have language to convey what they are experiencing too, you know? And so one thing that I do with children, especially males, I always ask them the miracle question, you know, like if you had a magical wand and you could change anything about your life, what would tomorrow look like for you? And it's something very telling about how they respond to that question. And so I will encourage, you know, this particular mom to first of all ask your child and be open to who is that child's support system, who are their trusted adults, and be open to it not being you. Right? Because even if the child is already, you know, she mentioned that there's some issues going on with their relationship, right? That may be the factor that is preventing that child from being as open, right? And so being open to, for one, addressing those needs of the child, but also being open to repairing that relationship in a very sensitive way, right? Being sensitive to that child's needs, understanding who is the adult in the situation, practicing some gentle and compassionate parenting, which is difficult, I understand, but it's possible. I always tell folks too, if something is hysterical, it's historical. So if someone is having a big reaction to something, right? And not necessarily an explosive reaction, but it could be internalized, right? Where they're withdrawn into themselves or they're isolated. That's still a very big reaction to something. And it has a history that's worth tracking, right? But you have to first get somebody who can get through to your child to explore options. And a lot of times a trusted adult that is outside of the home could potentially, persuade the child, encourage the child to, compromise, go to one therapy appointment and see how you like it, go to two, or, is a way to get around that.
Wow.
I think you said something so powerful.
Said so much that's so powerful.
If something is if something is hysterical, it's historical. Mm-hmm. And I think that is so powerful, because to me, it's saying like, this is big to me, mm-hmm. and it's planted in me now. That is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we take things for granted as far as like things that our children may say, because what's big to them is not big to us. And so being able to listen to our children is key. And not react all the time. I always tell my husband, I'm such a reactor and he's so calm. He's such a listener. And so all the time, and I tell my children, like, I'll fuss and say, well, why didn't you tell me that? You told daddy. And it's because I react and I don't necessarily listen all of the time. And so I may get it secondhand. And so I'm learning now to be a better listener and not to respond all of the time, because it's better for you. And so I think that has helped with like conversations and having hard conversations. And so like Makai, if he wants to tell us something, he'll send a text and say, okay, I need to have a conversation with you all. And so it just kind of braces me. And so I say, before I fuss, or before I react, and it's, and then we're able to have a better conversation. I'm able to listen to his why of why he may want to do something this way. And I'm learning from June because he's such a great listener to me. So that was very powerful. We're about to close out. We have about 5 minutes left. And how do people connect with you? Maybe something you said tonight has impacted their lives. I don't know if you all are accepting clients. How can they contact you?
Before you do that and before you close, I dare not miss this opportunity to say that suicide rate among children and teens is escalating at high numbers. And again, it is important to talk with your children, ask them how their day. Don't take anything for granted or for little, as you said. My son's neighbor went home from work and her granddaughter in fifth grade had hung herself in the closet. Um,
Jesus.
Tragedies are happening and they are happening in alarming numbers and rates with children. Please, please, please check on the children, ask them how they're doing, how their day, and see what's going on with the children. Don't take anything lightly or for granted. Please, please, please.
Miss
And that
Boyd,
is that is so true. The pandemic has caused a lot of increase in mental health just because it was a traumatic. It doesn't seem as traumatic to us, but the children had to go from being socialized and being in the classroom and being around peers to being shut in the house for all day and on the computer, and that not interacting piece. And some children are in homes where it's a lot of going on and they love to go to school to escape what's going on in the home. So now you are confining them to the home. And then the reality of what they know, and everybody in mass and they're scared. So I work now with this company called Timely MD, and we do mental health, and we do it through an app, and it's through the computer, and it's with all college students. So you have to be in college to be able to use it. And it's all, we get alerts all the time, students committing suicide, because the ability to go back out now and reemerge into an environment that has changed so much, and you still have fears, and no one is talking about the fears, and everybody is pushing each other to keep going forward like nothing has changed. So it has mental health in the children and young adults is increasing. And every time it's very often that I get someone on the phone and I ask them, are you having thoughts about harming yourself? And the question is yes. Mm-hmm. And my next question, do you have a plan? Mm-hmm. So this is something every day I ask, 5 days a week. Those are questions I have to ask every call I get. Are you thinking about harming yourself? Do you have a plan? Have you ever attempted to commit suicide?
Yeah. And parents can ask, you asking your child, do you want to kill yourself, is not going to plant the idea in their head.
It's already there.
You're not that powerful.
It's either there or not.
Right. So ask the question. I've lost track of how many suicide assessments I've done this academic year. I've lost track. So I echo everything that has been said about that. You can ask the question. It is not, a lot of parents shy away from it because they think that they have enough power to instill that thought into the child's mind, and that is not true.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Ayana, let me give this out. There's a mobile crisis number that is 800-939-5911. If someone is in a crisis and has no provider or someone to take care of them, they can call the crisis line 24/7, and someone will come out and assess the situation, just for FYI.
Miss Boyd, tell me that number one more time.
800-939-5911, mobile crisis.
5911. Wait a minute.
Yeah. 800-5911. 5911.
Say it one more time, Miss Boyd. I'm sorry.
800-939-5911. And it could be children or adults. Someone will come out and assess and give directives.
I think that is so important. I think that
Gabe behind you.
yes.
Thank you, Ivy.
Yes. And I just want to say this, it is so important. And I don't know how many parents take the time to have those conversations with their children. And so when the children come into my class, and I have first graders, and we talk about social emotional health and well-being is so important. And so I always ask them, how do you feel? And so if they're having a wonderful day, then they do this. If they're having an okay day, they hold their hands straight out. If they're having a bad day, they hold their hands down. And so I give them the opportunity to say why they feel like they feel. And some of them whisper it in my ear, and some of them may say, I had one student to say that her little chicken died. And so she was just sad about her chicken. And so the class just shows her love and, tries to make her feel better. But I think that is important because a lot of times we don't even ask as adults sometimes, how do you feel or how is your day going? And so to be able to ask those children those questions, you never know when it's the moment that you can save a child's life or you can help a person from that moment. And so I'm so grateful that you all have given us this information on today. Like I said, we're going to do a part 2 to this, even though we'll be out of the month of May, but we're going to do the church edition. I think that it is key. I think that it is an important conversation that needs to be had. And I think that that's something that we're going to have coming up as well. I appreciate all of you all. Our time is up.
And before we close, I want to say this is befitting to each one of you, regardless of what you had planned to do when you first started out. The Bible declares that many are the plans of a man's heart. Nevertheless, it's the purpose of God that's going to prevail. So
That's
I thank each of you for allowing God's purpose to unfold in your life and in the lives of the community and everybody that you all come into contact with. Thank you so much for your services.
I'm so grateful that people have you. I'm grateful for each of your respective places. I'm grateful that those children have you at the school. I'm grateful, Dr. Shannon, that you're even reaching the children, adults as well.
Yes.
And Reverend Boyd, you go from the natural to the spiritual as well. So you're doing it all as well. And I know for myself what Miss Boyd has been for me. And so from day one, like her assistance to my family has been, it's been
from day one until
we close our eyes. But it's really, really so powerful. So your impact is greater than you'll ever see. And people may not always tell you thank you or how you've impacted their lives, but I know that you all are making an impact in people's lives. So thank you for your service. Hopefully in 2024, we're going to have a new therapist on the scene. So hopefully I'm working towards it. We're going to see.
And don't forget to put yourselves, all of you who are listening, don't forget to put yourselves on your own to-do list to take care of you.
Yes.
With all of your to-do, put yourself on it to take care of you.
And that's powerful too, because when you're looking after someone else's mental health, you don't necessarily take time to look at yours. So any last thoughts that you all want to share before we go off?
No, I echo her sentiments. Take care of yourself. If you're not on your to-do list, throw it away and start over again. Practice healthy boundaries. I have boundaries with everybody. The people I love, the people I work with, my dog, they create crates for a reason, boundaries don't necessarily protect you directly. They protect your values so that your values aren't compromised. And when your values aren't compromised, your health is not compromised, right? And so it is really important to have actions in place for situations that can jeopardize your values.
Wow.
Yep.
Do either one of you all? That was good. Any last words?
Yes. Like you say, self-care. In social work, we call it self-care. And, social workers, that's one of the professions with the most highest burnout rate, where people will be social workers for 20 years and leave and go to a new profession. I actually did my dissertation about the rate of burnout in spiritual leadership and how spirituality is one of the things that helps with burnout and help people to maintain and do better with self-care. So for me, my religion, my faith in God, my practice, that's what keeps me going, because like Mr. Young said, I have boundaries, and it's not for a bad thing, but boundaries help me to function. It helps me to function naturally and spiritually, because I need my time to just still away and to be, just not to hear everything in my ears, so I can hear from God, so I can find my place of peace. But self-care is really good, and scheduling time to do things for yourself and also with your family, because a lot of the times when you're spending time with your family and with the loved ones, some of these issues, some of these things, it comes out in conversations, but you have to be willing to listen and not be offended when you hear these things. So spending time having these family conversations, doing things together, it also gives you a glimpse of where your child is, where your spouse is, where everybody is in the family.
Yeah, and guilt comes with boundaries. The closer the group of people are that you're trying to enforce a boundary with are to you, guilt is going to come with that, but it is guilt worth working through. When you have peace, right? When you've experienced mental anguish and you experience peace, you do what you have to do to experience that peace for as long as you can, because life is gone life.
Right.
Write down 5 things every day that you're grateful for.
Gratitude.
Take 5 minutes to decompress each day. Start your day with something pleasant. Practice mindfulness and give your problems a rest. Detox yourself from technology, work, and the news. Just a few things.
I love that.
Wow,
I love that.
man, we had to let y'all go. Y'all give
I know, it's just so good. It's just so good.
Yeah, real.
But I like that. I like that. And so you all have given a wealth of knowledge. I say to everybody out there, take care of your mental health and be aware of it. Get therapy if you need therapy. It is okay. And pay attention to your children. Pay attention to the signs. Pay attention to their behavior. Like Shelton said, the isolation and the different things. Pay attention to their friends, who they're hanging around, and all of that stuff. It really matters. So I thank you again. Look, Ivy said, let me go get y'all a sandwich so y'all can stay on just a little bit longer. It is that good to me. But thank you all. We are coming with part 2. Don't even worry about it. We are coming with part 2. Coming up soon in the month of June. It won't be as long as it's been. We have been out for a while. So I thank you all. I thank you all. I thank you for joining us on tonight. Be blessed. And do you all do private therapy? How can they reach you all?
I'm available. You can reach me through Facebook, Shannon Hargrove Scott, and then my the nonprofit Progression Services. There's a business page on there as well that you can message me through.
I don't have a private practice, but since I'm going to start school, I may take on some clients for private practice. So you can follow me on Instagram at Refined Therapy.
I like that.
Mine is just my regular cell number.
Gotcha. And Miss Boyd is on Facebook as well. She is on Facebook as well. And if you all need to get in contact with any of them and you can't find them, reach out to me. I'll make sure you have their links and link you to them. Again, thank you all for watching on tonight. We'll come up again in June. We'll give you a little better notice than we did this time, but we didn't want to miss this month. So look, Jessica said she got the pretzels. They are loving it. So thank you all. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
God bless. Thank you.